Now you're asking, what party are you talking about?
So Mark always thinks that there's a party that I'm holding somewhere.
Oh, I
so
see.
every time I see him,
Oh, I got you.
we're discussing the party, and it's always pointed out that he just missed it.
He missed the
or,
party, or he's not invited.
So
or
he's very sensitive.
Well, from what I can tell with PR guys, there pretty much is a party somewhere all the time.
He's very sensitive to the party that
that he has never been invited to.
It's just always been like just misses, and so never can tell. Someday there will be one.
And he will not be invited.
That's true.
So we were talking about Eccles.
Yeah.
That's where I go with my C7 if I want to fry my tires, because on Saturday there's nothing
there's nobody
going on
there.
So, and it doesn't have a lot of rub strips to it. It's actually not bad. So I figure the cops, hope they're not listening, but the cops are never on Eccles. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's low probability environment. So
Right.
But you have the railroad crossing there.
yeah, I go on the other side of the railroad crossing. Yeah, so I'm used to doing 0 to 60. That's all. It's no big deal.
Man, I grew up in this area, and when I was growing up, this was all rural.
Yeah, just
It was all
around here.
dirt roads and everything, and that's how you learn how to drive fast, especially on dirt road. You can do, kick the ass end out, do four-wheel drifts, do handbrake turns, 360 handbrake turns. That's how I learned how to drive.
The things I did with my mother's 78 Dodge Omni. Oh my gosh. She's not listening.
I still think I've got the all-time record of driving through Kensington Park.
In terms of from one
End
side
to the other.
other?
I'll bet I have certainly, if not the best time,
Yeah.
right up there.
Was there a girl involved?
No, there was
So-
3 drunk buddies hanging out of the back of the station wagon.
Oh my God. Country Squire or Town and
Country
Country?
Squad, LTD.
LTD Country Squire.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
This gave General Motors the idea to build their test track out there. I was like, wow, look at that guy. He's really going fast. Maybe if we made one of those and it didn't have people going to a beach, we would be that much further ahead.
Oh jeez.
Yeah, you can't drive like we used to drive. There's just too much traffic. There's nowhere to go.
No.
You used to be, in this area, be able to go off-roading, no problem at all. Now it's all subdivisions
And you could be on road and it'd be like off-roading because, I mean, I remember for years 6 Mile wasn't paved, 5 Mile wasn't paved. I mean, it was just...
But you can go 80 plus on the freeway, not even have to worry about it these days. It seems like.
If you go 80 in the left lane, you're going to have people on your bumper.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I keep it to 80 because I had read the cops will not pull you over for going 80. But there's people going 90 plus.
Except in Ohio. If you got Michigan.
Oh, no.
Ohio,
No, I'm talking
I got to
about
go under the
Michigan,
speed limit.
Yeah.
You're called revenue
Yeah,
over there.
that's right. They have a radar that sniffs out Michigan plates. Watch Autoline After Hours live at Autoline.tv every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 12 p.m. Pacific. You can subscribe to this podcast for free by searching for Autoline in iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, your journey, our passion. Lear, a global leader in automotive seating and electrical systems. And by Borg Warner, propulsion solutions that support a clean, energy-efficient world. Well, Faith in Begorra, Mr. Gary, we have a St. Patrick's theme to today's show.
Well, with that opening, I'm ready to start river dancing or something.
Detroit river dancing.
Yeah, there you go. And it's Pi Day.
Explain that.
So March, third month, 3, today's 14th, and the first 3 digits of the pi are 3.14, and if Sheldon Cooper were here, he'd have the rest of them.
And yesterday was 313 day.
Which would be the Detroit area code,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
I have that area code, by the way, on my phone. And we should just let everybody know, you just heard the voice of Michael Robinet from IHS Markit, who's joining us today. And we got Charlie Chesbrough from Cox Automotive. And we ought to let the audience know, we got two brainiacs here.
Right.
Gary and I are going to try to drain the brains of all your knowledge here.
Uh-oh.
That's scary.
So just so people know, so I was attending a briefing last week at IHS Markit where Michael works, and he gave a presentation on a forecast of what's going on in the industry, and it's just rather phenomenal. And then Charlie, who is an economist with Cox Automotive, can put some color and some numbers, besides just pie, to the to this whole thing. So Michael, walk us through some of the things that you talked about last week. I mean, it's just...
Well, let's bore into the specific.
Right.
You and I had been talking about this before the show, and you see the end of the tunnel for the internal combustion engine, or the end of the light, or the end of the trail, or whatever you call it.
No, actually, what we see is that certainly the OEMs are looking out, and they're saying, if I need to get 15 years out of an engine, whoa, that's 2035, 2040. Yeah, not so sure I want to launch an engine in 2022 or 2023. So what we're saying is that the OEMs have basically stopped full new engine development. They're going to modify the top halves of the engine till the cows come home. They're going to do, valves. They're going to do induction, injection, different types of new technologies on the top half of the engine because it's cheaper to do that. But in terms of new blocks, new engine families, we're not seeing any development for the next at least 5 or 6 years. And there could be some vocation, what we call vocation-based engines. If you really think about what a full hybrid vehicle needs, basically needs the equivalent of a Honda generator. I mean, it doesn't have to go up to 3,000 or 4,000 RPM. It doesn't have to have variable valve. It's just basically get it up to about 1,800 or 2,000 and let her run. So there could be an opportunity for a new type of engine in the future. But in terms of new engine development, it's slowing down substantially.
Now, we did a show last year with Dan Nicholson running
Right.
GM Powertrain. And I asked him about that. Are you going to be working on new engines? He said, absolutely. And I said, I hear that everybody in the industry, this is it. And he says, well, I hope that's true because we're going to keep on doing it.
So they're going to do
Has
top
that
half.
changed at GM? Or?
No, I think they're going to do top half. What we say, they're going to put new technologies on existing engines, maybe some new displacements, but in terms of brand new engine families, so new bore spacing, new technology from the ground up, there's going to be very little of that. Most of these OEMs are shifting a lot of their resources over to doing basically ICE and battery and electrification. That's basically what most of them are doing.
So it'll be a utilization of existing technology.
Exactly. And some new technology on the top half of the engine.
Right.
But in terms of rethinking the engine from the ground up,
All
there's
right,
going to be
so-
very little of that.
So we often hear of Ford has a new engine program.
Right.
That'll be done?
No, what it could be is maybe a displacement off of an existing engine family. They'll borrow the bore spacing, maybe they'll do something with bore and stroke, but for the most part, it'll be all maybe some new top half, new injection technologies, maybe that type of thing. But what we're really referring to is when you're in the powertrain space and you're supplying components, you look for opportunities to get your stuff onto the engine. And if the engine families are just going to keep going, it's going to be more and more difficult to get your stuff on the engines going forward. That's the problem. It's
And an
lack of
engine costs
opportunity.
what? About $500 million? A clean sheet engine is about $500 million?
Oh God, usually more than that, to be honest with you. It sometimes could be well over $1 billion, depending on how many plants you're going to build it at. But
No, that's what I'm thinking. In an existing plant, one plant, I always thought it was, and a typical engine plant makes what, about 500,000 engines a year?
yeah, engine and transmission plants and vehicle plants they always think about them in modules. So car plants 250, engine plants 350, 4, and then transmission plants are sometimes 6 or 7. That's kind of like they think of them in terms of modules. At least everybody's a little different, but from what we've understood, that's the way that most of the industry looks at it.
And how about electric motors? They're going to make or buy?
I think at the outset they're going to buy because obviously because of the technology and how quickly they can get to the market. But longer term, OEMs have shown us that if they're going to use enough of them and the technology is going to be relatively stable, then they'll invest in it. It doesn't make any sense to keep buying from Joe if I can keep, if I can make it internally more efficiently and be able to be a bit more nimble that way.
Okay, but doesn't this become predicated on volume?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so, to the point of electric motors, now, I mean, if there's not profound electrification and numbers are still comparatively low, what would be the likelihood that they would say, oh yeah, we'll swap out this engine plant or
I mean,
assembly plant
obviously,
that's
there's a lot of
fast?
regulatory issues that got to be worked through because, as we were talking about when you came out, China and Europe and Japan are on their own separate trajectory. And you could say what you want about what China may or may not do, but they're moving in that direction. And whether we stay in that direction or not is going to be another major factor. But we're not saying that engine plants are going to close. I guess what we are saying is that the use of engines are going to modify because, again, we're not looking at the BEV so much, battery electric without an engine. We're looking at basically mild hybrid, PHEVs, and full hybrids. Those are going to still be around. Those are going to be the predominant level of electrification, and the ICE is still on board. We're going to be building some really complicated vehicles for the next 15 or 20 years.
Yeah. So, Charlie, what do you think? Electrification going to catch on, or what's your
Well,
crystal ball?
the industry's certainly putting all their eggs in that
Well,
basket,
I know
right?
the industry is, but then I look at the sales numbers and they're going nowhere, with the exception of Tesla. EV sales are going nowhere. In fact, I believe they declined last year if you take Tesla out of the equation. So, bully for Tesla, I mean, what they've been able to do. But for the traditional OEMs, I mean, it ain't going nowhere, and not even in Europe.
No, and I think one of the things I think is really difficult for consumers when you talk about electrification is what technology do I buy? 10 years ago we were all told the Chevy Volt's going to be the greatest thing, best technology. Well, Chevrolet's abandoned that now. People are buying vehicles and owning them for 10, 15 years maybe. What would you recommend today in terms of if you wanted to get an electric vehicle? What's going to be around 10 years from now? And I think that's asking a lot of consumers to make that commitment financially without knowing what the commitment really is from the OEMs.
I tell people who ask me about it, do not buy an electric car now because the technology is racing so fast that whatever you buy right now is going to be hopelessly obsolete. So the best thing to do is to lease. But, you guys have seen all the figures. Used electric cars, they can't give them away. No. Even at peanuts for prices, they can't sell them.
I think we got our whole idea of electrification for a lot of us has to change. A lot of us have been kind of trained electrification goes right to the BEV. But, we saw at most recent auto shows, the OEMs are getting smart about this. They're saying, okay, I'm going to do a mild, and I'm going to use it for low-end torque at launch to really get this vehicle up to speed, and then I'll let my ICE kind of take, and then you see Ford doing that, GM has basically decided to move in that direction, FCA is doing that, and then even, so I think we need to change the way we're thinking about electrification. When we say electrification, that's what we're referring to, all the way from mild through to the BEV.
All right, so basically, just so people who are not perhaps up on this, so the mild hybrid is basically using an electric motor, and it has a battery that's supplemental to the engine.
Usually integrated into the transmission.
Right, so it just adds more boost to the transmission.
It's basically helping that vehicle get up from 0 to, let's say, 25 miles an hour.
And then it just stops.
And then the IC, if that.
And then the IC. It cannot go into pure EV mode.
Right.
No, and it almost never does.
And so a mild hybrid is not a Prius-type hybrid.
No, it's more of a helper hybrid.
Right, so that's a great way of putting it. It's a helper hybrid, and so it's just like an additional something added.
And you're going to find more and more OEMs are going to use that, and they're going to market it in such a way that, hey, we've got better torque, we can get off the line better, you're going to get better fuel economy, but boy, you're going to get off the line better. And if I were an OEM, that's the way I would market it and help out with fuel economy.
In fact, that's exactly what Chrysler's doing with
Sure.
Ram. They're not marketing it as a hybrid. They don't even want to touch the word hybrid.
No.
They call it e-torque.
Yeah.
They're selling power, not efficiency.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I mean, if you think about it, so the Chrysler Pacifica, the plug-in hybrid version, which basically is like a Prius hybrid type sort of thing on steroids because you're plugging in. And they said, we're not going to call it a plug-in hybrid. We're just going to call it a hybrid. And here they have this mild hybrid system that they're also using in the Jeep.
Yeah, regular.
And they're not.
They don't even use the word hybrid.
Right.
Yeah. That's okay. I mean, from a marketing perspective, if it gets customers into the vehicles, more power to them. Absolutely.
So,
But let me just say real quick, though, I think one thing that's kind of interesting when we talk about even just the hybrids, in the European markets and in Asia, where gasoline prices are at least twice what they are here in the U.S., they're still not the dominant vehicles over there. Consumers, even in an environment that says, boy, I want to get the best fuel economy I can and save a lot of money, people still aren't gobbling these things up. And I think there's something that's, I don't know what the technology, not being nervous about it, or I love my old engine and I don't want to give it up. But something's keeping consumers away.
No, it's fear of the unfamiliar. And, the reason Chrysler's not using the word plug-in is, I've had this conversation with friends. They'll say, oh, what is that car? And you'll tell them, it's a Chrysler plug-in hybrid. What do you mean plug-in? Well, yeah, you can plug it in. What happens when the juice runs out? No problem, it's got an engine on board. Yeah, but you said you had to plug it in. Yeah, you plug it in, but it's also got an engine. You just go around. They don't get it. They just don't get it.
Abbott and Costello.
Yeah.
All right. So how do we? So
Wait,
earlier.
Let me add one thing, because diesels are making a comeback in Germany. I just learned this, that Volkswagen is having very good success, and diesel sales for Volkswagen have gone up in Germany. Why? Because they're presenting it as the new diesel. It's not that old dirty diesel. This is their
I'm
diesel.
I'm old enough to remember the new Chrysler, by the way.
Sorry, Gary.
All right,
didn't mean to interrupt, but
to the point of Volkswagen. So this week they announced that they're going to be making 20 more electric vehicles than they had planned, which would bring the total number to 70 within the next decade. And then they're going to be growing what they think is the number that they'll be producing from 15 million to 22 million. So what's going on there? Are these guys at Volkswagen like?
Let's back up a little. You got to look back. You got to stand back a little bit and say Volkswagen right now, 40% of their sales as a group is in China. In China, I know you guys were talking earlier about, maybe electrification. The Chinese government is going to make darn sure that electrification is somehow going to catch on, because they look at that as a competitive advantage and as a technology leader for the rest of the world. This is China's opportunity. And I'm not saying anything that's really out of sorts, but this is their opportunity to take a technology and be a leader globally in it. And so Volkswagen, with 40% of its volume, they have to follow that. This is the tail wagging the dog. And then you add in Europe, where you've got plug-ins in markets like London and Paris and Frankfurt and other locations. They have to move into some level of electrification. I don't think the 20 is not a BEV. There's various levels. But certainly, they know that that's where their future is going to lie if they're going to be strong in China and strong in Europe. Absolutely.
So what happens to the United States in all this?
Well, we could be a little bit of a laggard, and that's frankly a bit of a danger. If we, and we're talking maybe North America here, we let Europe and China and Japan kind of continue to progress down the regulatory path that they're going, which makes, from their perspective, makes complete sense, and electrification is the odds-on favorite of where that's going to go, then they're going to be certainly leaders in that technology. If we decide that we're going to flatten our regulatory standards, and we're having trouble meeting them right now, but at some point, if we do flatten them by 21, we're not going to be leaders in those technologies, and we're going to have trouble exporting our vehicles, and we're going to have trouble buying their vehicles, and that's going to make us a little bit more of an island.
Well,
I was just going to add that I think if we really want to get electric vehicles, maybe the more pure electric type vehicles to catch on here, it may even require more government regulation in terms of everybody's plug-in has to have the same shape so that I can plug my Nissan vehicle into your Toyota Charger.
Yes, but.
Otherwise, we're going to have very limited charging stations. So if we don't have some specifications of everybody's got the same stuff out there, it's going to be very hard to get these things charged up.
Here's the only thing. Nobody makes money selling electric cars. Tesla's had a couple of profitable quarters. Now they're slashing and burning to try to keep that going. Nobody else makes money on electric cars. I personally believe you cannot make a profit on an electric car with a reasonable return unless it's priced at $50,000 or above. China, you can do these little neighborhood electric vehicles and you can sell them.
Sure.
I'm not sure it's a bad thing to be a laggard in this regard. I don't see why you should, as a business, rush pell-mell into losing so much money because no one knows how to make money on these cars right now.
All right, so you're the economist. Can you make it up on scale?
Well, the problem is we don't make the batteries. A lot of the, at least again, talking about more of the pure electric route, that's all got to be imported, and that's something that we're trying.
Not true. We have 3 cell manufacturing
we
plants
do now.
just in this state alone.
Yeah.
But China's, they've been really kind of trying to corner
They're
the
the
market
dominant player,
and really
right.
trying to dominate this. So I think there's a lot of vulnerabilities for it here. I think at some point there's be a technological breakthrough. I mean, that's kind of what everyone's banking on, that we're going to get 500 miles on a charge, that we're going to figure this out. But clearly nobody's figured it out yet. And until that happens, I think you're right. There's
The
a lot
EV
of risk.
leaders that I talk to who are really into this thing tell me 2028, 2030, that's when these things really start to become viable. But for the next decade, you're going to lose your ass making these things.
Yeah. But if you're looking at the journey, what we tell our supplier clients is that you need to be relevant through the journey. So you may look out to 2025 and 2030. I've got to have something that's a system that works in a BEV structure, and it's got to have differentiation and whatever. That's great. But you're right. There's not going to be a lot of volume out there. You got to be relevant through the journey if you're going to make money and be able to get there.
Well, so let me ask you. So you're talking about suppliers. So if we look at big suppliers like Continental and Bosch and Denso and Magna and companies like this, okay, if the technological development is occurring in places like Europe, like China, and if we go back to the beginning of all of this, where you're saying that the powertrain development is going to be so here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, isn't it likely that those big companies will put their chips on these other markets and not on this market?
Let's face it, you still got, 17 million units here, and they're usually well-contented. So this is still a pretty important market for all those companies that you mentioned. But, we tend to think that there's probably 8 or 9 tier ones that I call more or less super tier ones. They basically have taken electrification and autonomous and gone to the next level. And they're investing like mad in those spaces to make sure that they're relevant over the longer term. Wall Street wants to see it. Everybody's saying, what are you doing in AV? What are you doing in EV? And you got to show what you're doing. I think some of the better companies are definitely doing that. And there's some smart people that run these companies. So I don't think that they're all kind of being led down the garden path, erroneously. There's a reason why they're doing this. I worry about some of the tier ones that aren't going in that direction. And there's going to be sort of new co and old co. And I'm really concerned about what that may do to the industry.
But Michael, we're already seeing so many companies, supplier companies, split in two.
Absolutely.
To do just this,
Absolutely.
they incorporate one as old co and a new one as new co because they think they can get better multiples.
Well, the talent is different, usually a little bit different. The cadence is different. We were talking earlier about how fast this stuff changes over. I talked to an electric vehicle manufacturer that said, hey, we're going to change our cell technology every 2 or 3 years. And I'm like, whoa. That's often, which means you change your software, which means you might even change your packaging. I mean, so the cadence that we're used to in our industry at 5 or 6 years, that's going to go away, at least for some aspects of the vehicle. So I think it's a new dawn. We've kind of reached this plateau on the volumes, at least in North America, but all of these other influences are really kind of muddying the waters, and everybody's kind of groping in the dark a little bit these days.
So John, you were saying $50,000 is where an electric car probably needs to be to
be profitable.
the companies make money on it. Charlie, can people afford to spend $50,000 on a car?
Well, the short answer is yes, because they're doing it today. But,
Afford.
Yeah. But I think that affordability certainly is, over the near term, is certainly a big issue for the industry. When we talk $50,000 for an electric vehicle, if that's the break-even point, the market's going to be there in about another 6-7 years. Will probably be that will
That'll
be the average price. So maybe the market will move to these EVs price point as opposed to the EVs haven't moved down.
And the EV break-even cost will come down too. But I don't see any battery breakthrough out there. I don't know anybody that I've talked to in the battery industry that's predicting a breakthrough.
And I think you're finding that some of the OEMs we've spoken to have said they've got to see some level of stability in battery technology before they even decide to put money down and make it themselves. So I got news for you. They're letting the tier ones take all the risk on this stuff.
Right.
And
look at the tier, here's Bosch, the biggest tier one of all. They made a strategic decision. We're not going to make cells. And I think it comes to what you're talking about here is there's other big players out there. There could be solid state batteries in another decade or so. Why invest in today's technology when the tomorrow stuff is going to be the
I think
future?
most OEMs are going to wait for solid state. And because they feel that at that point, maybe the technology stabilized a bit and then they can invest in it and start to take some of the real cost out of it. But until then, they're just going to let the suppliers in the industry basically continue to drive more and more cadence and more of the technology on that side.
Is there the possibility, though, that just as you're saying that the industry has been used to a certain cadence and now there's a completely different cadence, that there could be a completely different structure to the auto industry, meaning perhaps some of these super tier ones, as you call them, basically become de facto car companies?
You hit the nail on the head. So if I'm a tier one and I traditionally would trundle down to Auburn Hills or go to Dearborn and go talk to my favorite customer, in the future where maybe some of my components are now procured by a tier one. So I've got to go talk to a tier one, and now the channel strategy changes tremendously, which means the value equation changes a lot. A lot of new players coming in. Some players are going to be consolidating. It's going to be the next, I'd say, 6 to 10 years are going to be really interesting in terms of how the structure of this industry is going to change.
We got some questions here for you guys from our viewers. Ray Mitrowitz wrote in to ask, who's got the best EV strategy, GM, Volkswagen, or Tesla, long term? Well, I'd say Tesla. I mean, it's all electric, right?
Yeah.
They have the most solid electric
They
strategy.
have to have a good
I think
strategy
you got to give it
going
to
to
them
survive.
right now, probably, but
Probably Volkswagen then? What would you say, Gary?
I think that Volkswagen is basically going all in. I mean, despite the fact that, what was interesting is they had a big media briefing this week explaining, all of their brands and what they're up to. And if you dug down deeper into some of these presentations, I mean, one of the things they said was, gee whiz, it was really great. We sold a lot of SUVs. And if we had more petrol engines, we could have sold even more. Okay, but they're making a big deal out of the electrification, and it just seems to me, whether it's China or what's going on in Germany and the rest of Europe, as you're saying, a lot of these city centers are banning internal combustion engines, whether they're gasoline or diesel or whatever. I mean, I think that they're atoning for their sins by going electric.
I think there's definitely some of that, but then you look at what GM is doing, and GM, I'm not saying they're investing at the same rate, but they're definitely seeing a lot of very similar things. So this is not just Volkswagen. Daimler's doing it, BMW's doing it.
Except for the fact, I mean, isn't it the difference though that we're seeing Volkswagen is actually pulling the trigger, and we hear that General Motors is going in electrification, but as Charlie points out, their lead arrow was the Volt. Goodbye, Volt. What's the other one? Bolt. How's that doing?
It's not selling either.
Right. So basically, what do they have? Can you buy a GM hybrid?
Yeah, no. I don't disagree. I think again, changing the vernacular. I think that they're going to use more milds, more plug-ins. They're going to need them for fuel economy. I mean, that's something that's getting lost in the conversation. If the regulations even stay close to where they are, it's going to be very, very difficult to do it with a pure ICE stop-start and traditional transmission strategy. It's going to be really tough. I mean, some OEMs are doing some better things on thermal efficiency. I think Toyota and others, but it's going to be pretty tough to get there.
But I still think we're, as an industry, facing an issue where we're building this product that the market has not said they want. And are we going to be in a situation where we're going to have to force this down people's throat that you're getting a hybrid vehicle, whether this is what you want or not, because it's all we're going to make, or we're forced to sell it to you.
You hit the nail on the head.
And without some sort of a national fuel tax policy or something to spur consumers into saying, yeah, I do want these things. Fuel economy is important to me. I think we're in a tough spot coming the next early 2020s.
All this EV stuff, whether here, Europe, China, it's all being driven by government mandate,
Absolutely.
not by consumer demand.
You're right.
100%, with the exception of Tesla. You know, I cut them a lot of slack in all this, but they're the only one.
And they're really a luxury car maker rather than an electric maker.
Right,
I mean,
right. And I've talked about this on the show. I think we're headed for EV disaster in the U.S. market. It's going to hit around 2022 when somewhere between 80 and 120 BEVs hit the showrooms at the same time. I just don't see the market demand for it. And so what do? Now you got to start discounting. Now your residual values go down. Now you got to subvent leases. Now you got acres of used stuff that you can't. I'd see it's a disaster. But as I said, this industry knows how to chew its way through disaster. And I think around 2028, the sun will start to shine, and that's when EVs will start to take off.
So Charlie, what do you guys see going forward in terms of the industry, in terms of sales? Is it
in terms of sales volume for this year? Well, we have a similar outlook that IHS has. We're expecting about 16.8 million this year, down a little bit from last year. And we see the market kind of continuing to moderate down to the mid-16 range over the next couple of years, really due to the fact of this affordability issue, that with interest rates rising in the background and just the cost of living in America these days rising, consumers getting squeezed and the market just coming down a little bit. And we've already kind of seen that in the data. Really without fleet activity last year, we would have had a down market. And it was really, we think tax reform really contributing to a little bit of extra fleet activity than we might have had otherwise last year.
so was last year 17.2 or 17?
Closer to 17.
17.3.
17.3.
When you throw in a couple of heavy vehicles, some people include them, some people don't include them, but around 17.3 range.
So then it go to
16.5 probably by the 2020, somewhere in that time frame.
Brilliant.
So this year should be off 2.5%.
Yeah.
That's what our current.
So you
on the
guys don't
sales
see
side.
this danger of all these off-lease vehicles crippling the market? Because
Well,
there's what, about 4 million
there-
vehicles
there's
coming
some-
off lease this
Well,
year?
it's already been going on.
Yeah.
We're expecting the peak to actually happen this year, where over 4 million of these off-lease vehicles are going to be coming back. What's kind of interesting is we always talk about the market sort of as new and used, but if you think of it more from a shopper's perspective, it's more of new plus 0 to 4 model year old vehicles, these off-lease vehicles. And if I think of the market as that, consumers are willing to go out and spend lots of money, take out a big loan, have a $400 a month plus payment. It's a 28 million plus market. But what's interesting within that is that the share that's used, that 0 to 4 model year, has risen from about 33% back in 2012 to it's over 40% of that market today. So one of the ways we've been dealing with this affordability issue in new vehicles is we're pushing those consumers into the used side to get these off-lease vehicles.
All right.
And
More of a price point issue, to be honest with you, in terms of what the monthly payment's going to be. I've got $400. What's $400 going to buy me? Well, you can get this new car, or you can get the slightly bigger 2-year-old car. Oh, I like that one. So it's really more about what can you get for your money, and with the technology that you're looking for.
We're going to have to take a quick commercial break, but a couple of comments and questions from the audience. AKA Andy Knuckles writes in, hello from Norway. Tesla Model 3 was the second most sold car here in February. How do you interpret their suddenly short delivery times? I guess I'd jump in. Tesla has lost most of its tax credits in the U.S. market. They're pushing cars to China and Europe right now, so especially to Europe.
Or you could just simply say that Elon has said that he would improve his logistics. They just get him to Norway faster. So.
Andy goes on to say, I'm a driving instructor in Norway. Recently bought a Volkswagen Golf GTE, a PHEV. So far, I am pleased, but it hardly runs cheaper than my Audi A3 TDI.
Something to be said for those diesels, huh?
That, and I'd like to know, what are the electricity costs in Norway?
Or is there some sort of other incentive? I don't know what it is, but there's some sort of other incentive on your taxes where you've got an EV vehicle, we're going to give you some other type of credit.
No, you pay no sales tax whatsoever in Norway. Whereas with an ICE, I believe it's 100% sales tax. So cars are very expensive in Norway. And Andy, maybe you can write in and see if I'm right on this. But, I was in Germany 2 weeks ago, and here in Michigan, we pay 13 cents per kilowatt hour. That's all in taxes, transfer, blah, 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 this, that, and the other thing. In Germany, it's 18 cents. The guy I was talking with pays 26 cents because he pays a little bit extra to have all green electricity. But, you know, at 13 cents a kilowatt hour, it's definitely cheaper to operate an electric versus a gasoline-powered car, even with, you know, $2.40, $2.50 gasoline like we're paying right now. But, you know, Tesla, I believe, charges 26 cents a kilowatt hour at its supercharging stations that you have to pay for. And I know in California, in peak charging times, you can be at 36 to 40 cents or even more. And now it isn't cheaper than running gasoline.
But it's filtered electricity. They just make it's really sweet.
Okay, we got a lot more to talk about, but first we got to give a shout out to the companies that help make this program possible.
The world is changing at an ever-increasing pace. No matter what the mode of transportation, there is always the need for an efficient propulsion system. And that's exactly what BorgWarner has been doing since the earliest days of the automotive industry. We create innovative mobility technologies that reduce energy consumption and emissions while improving performance. Our proven track record has made us an industry leader in forward-looking propulsion solutions for combustion, hybrid, and electric vehicles.
Lear Connexus offers a parental controls application with geofencing that sends notifications regarding driving behavior and location, including curfew alerts, acceleration alerts, and speed alerts. All delivered to a smartphone application that includes vehicle location, driver notifications, and a report card of driving history, including notifications when predefined geographic boundaries are crossed. For more information, visit Lear.com.
We had in January. It really hit those electric vehicles.
Okay, we're back, and it's time for Dr. Data.
All right, so this actually is related to someone who's been on the show, Joanne Muller from Axios. And so Axios Harris, the research organization, did a survey. So Katie, please bring up the first. So they did a poll, okay? So the Axios Harris Poll 100. So what they're talking about is the reputation of companies, okay? So what they did was they surveyed Americans and they basically said, okay, what major corporations are you aware of, right? So that's basically the first cut. And then what is the reputation that you have based on your awareness of them? So Katie, the next thing. So there are 8 OEMs on this list of 100 corporations. Now, these are corporations of all types, okay? And, you know, Coca-Cola, Google, whatever, right? So my question to you guys is, what do you think is the highest ranking OEM, and how high has that company gotten? Now, this is where it gets very easy. Now, you're saying to yourself, Jesus, this is really hard. I got to think about this stuff. So Katie made it very easy for you. So Katie, please bring this up. So here's your choice. Is it A, B, or C? So these are the 8 companies, but
It's just awareness.
Just North America, just U.S.
This is just U.S. Yeah. And so basically what you're looking at here is that this is the list of the companies that made it, and one of those lists actually has it in right order. So basically, this is the part of identifying which one made it as number one of all the car companies that are on the list of the Axios Harris 100 poll. So is it Ford? Is it Honda? Is it Tesla? Is that, I mean, is General Motors the second, or is General Motors the
dog?
fifth? Is you know, I mean, is FCA in second place, and is
Well, it's not a quality issue. It's just simply, are you aware of this company?
and what's the rep?
Yeah.
And
Do you have a good impression
favorable-
of their company? Yeah.
Well, I'll say if this was globally,
No, not global.
I know it's not, but I'm just going to throw this in. I know that I've seen brand value
I've
ranking.
seen the same thing.
And Toyota is always
Yes,
amongst
they're very,
automakers
very high.
number one.
And
but this is
Tesla has moved up a lot as well. But you're
So as you can see, Toyota is not on any of these lists as being the first.
no, not even close.
I don't think it's C. That's my opinion. I just don't think.
Well, you got to guess what it is.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Michael.
I'm
You
going to
spoke
say,
up.
I know I'm going to stand out there and I'm going to take my Detroit hat off, but I think it's going to be B.
B.
Okay, Charlie.
I guess I'm going to be a local boy and go with Ford there at the top. I think they have got pretty good reputation out there. Even
They do, and I would go with A, except that GM is number 2, and I don't think GM's got that much of a good public perception. And it's not going to be C because I don't think the American public knows what FCA even means.
No.
So, Michael, I'm with you. I'm going to say it's B with Honda ranked number 1 and Tesla 2.
Damn. And the answer is?
Ta-da!
there you go.
All right, but you're not done. Okay, so we're talking the top 100 corporations. Okay? So, how high has a car company made it vis-a-vis all of the other companies on the list? How reputable?
Out of how many?
100.
Out of 100.
I'd say Honda made the top 20.
We got to give a number. Come on.
19.
19.
No, I'm going to say Honda is probably closer to maybe number 5 or 6.
Okay, so we got
Yeah.
5.
Let's say 5, sorry.
5.
Got to have a
Let's
number.
just say 5.
Okay, so we got
Yeah.
5,
19.
19. John?
10.
See, this is the problem of being in Detroit. You guys are just a bunch of homers. The answer is,
36.
Jeez,
Yeah.
Murphy.
so there you have it.
Yeah.
And see, but you were right, John. See, the General Motors,
oh, yeah,
or
GM way down.
FCA at the bottom. And
Toyota's
and,
so far down. That's surprising.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know, it as an auto guy, it pains me to know that probably things like Kleenex and Purina dog chow rank way higher than any
Or
car
Apple
company.
iPhone or Amazon Prime.
Well, those are
Yeah.
easy ones.
Yeah.
So of course.
Nothing
right.
against Amazon. I love my
Yeah, right.
Amazon Prime, but yeah.
So that was the number for. So you guys, you actually did pretty well.
We'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. As you guys know, what was the question I was supposed to ask on St. Patrick's Day?
Who's going to get the luck of the Irish?
Oh yeah, who's going to get the luck of the Irish?
So which person in the industry or which company in the industry is just suddenly going to and be in great shape? Boy,
Yeah, it's
this
tough.
is-
I mean, it's going to be a tough year, I think.
You think it's gonna be a tough year?
it's-
Okay, I'll jump in. I think, believe it or not, the luck of the Irish is going to get tipped to the Ford Motor Company for 2019. And I say that because all new Explorer, all new Escape, full year of Nautilus, new Aviator, the new Cobra. Does the refresh of the F-150 come this year?
No,
Or is
it's not.
Okay.
Until next year. Yeah.
But just with that level of rollout and full year of Ranger, I think, at least in North America, Ford's going to have a great year.
Well, that's a good, I like that one. I'd almost put them maybe a little bit into 2020, I think is really going to be their year. But boy, I mean, so far this year, Hyundai's been the one that's been doing the best. I don't know that that's going to hold up all year long, but the early reviews are they're doing okay. Gosh, I guess I'd have to go with Hyundai. I just think that they had a bad year last year, so there's only up for them at this point. And given how much difficulty Nissan's going through these days, that they're probably going to pick up some business that would have gone to Nissan otherwise.
Michael?
I was actually going to say Ford, and I'm going to say it pains me to say that, but I will say that their portfolio is getting a little lopsided in the sense that they are doing a very good job on sort of mid-size crossovers all the way on up into the pickup. Aviator, I thought Aviator was really the vehicle of the car show. I thought the packaging, the styling.
Everyone's raving about it.
Yeah, I mean, I worry a bit about the pricing, but I guess they're going to have to work their way through that. But I like what they've done.
Lost the XT6.
Yeah. I went on a lot of, and I know the OEMs are watching, so I'll have to be careful what I say. But
Don't piss off your customer.
yeah, I'm going to try. I'll try not to. And I know Michelle Culver was probably thinking about this. But I will say that you looked at the XT6 and the Aviator, and there were a lot of, even in the press, there were a lot of competition and saying, well, why did they do this? But you could tell that, Cadillac was looking at their vehicle more for the China market. It had a lot more rear interior packaging, and certainly it's important for this market. I'm not so sure the Aviator is probably as focused on what that China market could be, and you have to consider that market when you're developing these vehicles. These are not the old days like we considered in the past. So.
Hey, just before we move in, AKA Andy Knuckles wrote in and says, yes, BEVs pay no tax whatsoever in Norway. Otherwise, it's a 25% value-added tax and a steep tax rate based on CO2. He says, theoretically, plug-ins use very little gas, but less so when you drive all day. He says 1 kilowatt hour is about 12 cents in Norway. Yeah. And Tesla charges a little bit over that for its charging. So about 20 cents a kilowatt hour. So that's very reasonable there. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Sorry, just wanted to interject that.
So moving right along.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give my luck of the Irish, by the way, to Rivian.
Oh.
I think that they're going to be the ones that are going to...
This year, though.
This year.
2019.
Yes.
Okay.
Because it seems to me, well, so they got some of it with the Amazon infusion of cash, right? And, there's still that thing hanging out there of what's General Motors going to do vis-a-vis Rivian. And as one of the things that you talked about at some length was the whole skateboard approach to vehicle
and not just
build.
Everybody.
Right. But I mean, everybody doing it. But here are these guys who basically are saying, all right, let's take this approach and go with it. And I think that's going to.
And they've been very public about that. It's really interesting how the approach that they've been very public about that.
Mm-hmm. So on the subject of things technological, we heard that GM Cruise, the autonomous vehicle arm of General Motors, as it were, is planning on hiring an additional 1,000 people. Does this make sense?
Well, as we were talking about earlier, you got the old company and the new company, and this is just what the industry is today. We have to be able to chew and walk gum at the same, or chew gum and walk at the same time. And I can't argue with GM. They're smart people, and if they think this is the right investment for them, I think it probably is.
Yeah, but they were smart people when they went bankrupt. So I mean, I'm not buying this all smart. I'm not buying all this smart people stuff.
It's a new world today, but I will say, the more I hear about autonomous and all of that coming in our lifetime and sweeping everything, I have to say I get more pessimistic about it, thinking that's really going to happen as quickly as we all think. The one thing we do know is that the industry is going to sell 500 million vehicles, new and used, over the next 10 years, the good old-fashioned way of through the dealerships, of people buying these things. And so I do get concerned when the industry is focused so much on what's going to be coming down in the 2.0 version of the industry, while there's still a lot of work to do here in the old industry. So I'm not going to question their decision to do that, but I think we are putting a lot of eggs in that basket. And like I said, I don't even know. We've had Uber and Lyft for quite some time now. These aren't new entities. They've been around 6-7 years now, spread all over the country. People are still buying cars. Do we really think if the cost of that Uber, if it's replaced by a robot, is half of what it is today, of all of a sudden now people aren't going to want to buy cars? And I just don't think we're there yet. I don't think the economics suggest that saving money is the only reason people own vehicles. There's a whole bunch of reasons that people own vehicles, and we might chip away at ownership and all of that's coming, but I think the industry, for all the talk about mobility, is still going to be one where people own and buy and use cars in the future too.
So John, do you question their...
Well, look, GM is going to, supposedly, they've said 2019 is the year that they launch GM Cruise as a ride-hailing service.
Which is this year.
This year in San Francisco. It'd be interesting to know, who are these people that they're hiring? Are they all engineers?
They want to hire engineers.
Okay. Then that becomes all the more interesting. Why do they see a need for an engineering workload that's got to be satisfied by hiring 1,000 more people? Or is it people are going to man their stores, or handle the retail end of this and handling the whole back end, the back room stuff that's going to have to monitor all of it. Not the cars per se, but the retailing of these rides.
So we spent a lot of time talking about EV. Now what, kind of cruises on the AV side. And that's going to be a little bit more of a consumer push, to be honest with you. I mean, consumers are asking for, I wouldn't say level 4 and level 5, but they're asking for greater safety, greater ability to have a safer vehicle, obviously within reason. The real battleground is going to be, frankly, in what we call level 2. Level 2, and SE has gone out and kind of redefined all the levels a little bit, which I found was quite interesting. That came out about 2 months ago. But level 3 now is more, less driver input. And level sort of 0, 1, and 2 is really more driver interaction, and then 3, 4, and 5 are less driver input. But the real activity is going to be how you broach from 2 into 3. That's going to be the real battleground going forward.
Well, would Super Cruise, Cadillac Super Cruise, be a level 3?
Yeah, or what Toyota is doing in terms of their Guard system, or I can't remember, Guardian system. I think that's going to be some real interesting battlegrounds that are really starting to shape up, to be honest.
Okay, but these companies are literally investing millions and millions of dollars in this. And I thought it was interesting that Waymo came out and said, okay, we're gonna sell the LiDAR systems that we developed to other companies, but non-automotive companies, okay? And it seems to me that the guys, I mean, and Google's got more money than anybody, right? Yep. I mean, and so it just sort of strikes me that even they're saying, you know what, we got to get a revenue stream here. We got to do something. And so there they are. They're running their service, their autonomous service right now in Arizona, right? Again, what are they going to make on this? Yeah. I mean, they're going to make data, they're going to make information, they're going to make knowledge. But I mean, I just say, as you're alluding to, I mean, is people suddenly going to say, gee, I need to take another trip that I hadn't even thought about before, and I won't take my car. I'll just have the robot do it. I just think that this is folly.
Well, there's so many holes you can punch into the whole mobility model that people are talking about. How does everyone get home from the Michigan football game? When the game's over at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The whole human interaction with these autonomous vehicles, I think, hasn't even been studied yet. I don't run across the street in front of a car because I'm worried about getting hit. Well, autonomous takes that away. What happens when humans no longer have to fear being hit by a car? Would you have just complete gridlock in New York City as pedestrians just cross wherever they want, whenever they want? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things we just don't know. We're just kind of assuming we'll figure it out. We do have some early data points, so as I pointed to, I think we're seeing with the Uber usage, I think most folks would tell you that cities are getting more congested as a result of these things being around. New York City, I was just there a couple weeks ago, and everyone's saying, oh my God, you can't even get around now because there's so many Ubers and Lyfts driving around all the time. And you can see that the public transportation usage is actually going down. I think Washington, D.C. is now no longer running trains past midnight because people are just taking Uber and Lyft home, so they don't need to have them. So I don't know that these things are actually replacing ownership. It's just maybe even just going to take away the need for public transportation. We just don't know these relationships yet. But I think as an industry, boy, we're making a lot of assumptions that it's all just going to work out for eventually the trillions that are going to be spent essentially to get rid of a guy making $10 an hour driving a car. It's a lot of money.
This is all about not being left out. Oh God, they got the technology, I didn't, and customers want to buy that. So all of this is making sure that they've got their ducks in a row, that they have ticked all the boxes, and if that technology takes off, I'm there. And I partnered with this guy, and I'm there. A lot of this is really driven by that, to be honest with you, and all these new partnerships that are coming around.
Okay, but if, as both of you guys say, that car sales are going to be going down, okay, it seems to me...
But it's not really, I wouldn't say, and Charlie has his own opinion, but I don't think it's more or less driven by any level of car sharing or anything like that. It's more cyclical than anything else.
Right, but what I'm getting to is that, okay, if car sales are going down, presumably this means they'll be earning less money. Is that fair?
Well, do you mean car sales in the next year or two, or do you mean 10 years from now?
Well, let's just say within the next 5 years.
Yeah, I would say that has, as Michael was saying, I don't think that has anything to do with...
Right, no, it has nothing to do with that. But my point is that simply that, okay, so if you have less money to spend are you spending it in the right places? Okay.
You mean
So-
as a car company?
As a car company. So, I mean, going back to the electrification thing, it seems to me that, that is going to happen for car companies, whether they're going to sell cars here or in Europe or in China, you're going to have electrification, right? So it would seem to me that it would be in a car company's best interest to spend their diminishing amounts of money on that. I'm not so sure it's a good idea to spend their diminishing amounts of money on getting full autonomous capability, because it just may be that nobody wants it. And if it gets to the point of just, an ADAS system, an advanced driver assistance system,
right.
I mean, which is something else entirely, right?
You can get that from a supplier. You can get tier one. I'm not saying they're dime a dozen. There's a lot of competition there, but that's where most of that technology is going to come from.
Right.
Absolutely.
But I'll point out these facts. I would agree with you guys that car sharing has not materially impacted car sales, but I do believe it has impacted it, especially in areas where Uber and Lyft and other ride-sharing services are super popular, i.e. like the Bay Area.
Or young people.
And, I've talked with Uber and Zipcar and Turo, and what they've told me is that every shared car, on average, obviates the need for 15 other cars. So the impact is exponential. As more and more people rely on car-sharing services, you reduce the need for them to own their own cars.
Right.
And right now, Uber and Lyft, the reason they're losing money is it costs them $2 to $3 a mile to move a passenger. You may pay less than that because in many cases they're trying to buy market share, and so they're subventing what they charge. But what AAA will tell you is it's 60 cents a mile to own a car right now today, an internal combustion or even an electric car. Depreciation, insurance, everything works out to 60 cents a mile. Larry Burns has said that an autonomous shared car might drop down to as little as 20 cents a mile. Yeah. And that's when Uber and Lyft could instantly become wildly profitable, and the whole sharing thing takes off in one big explosion. And that's what these car companies are hedging their bets on.
And well, if you really think about it, what differentiates a Mercedes versus a General Motors product versus a Toyota product in a level 4 and level 5 environment? So they're also trying to make sure that they've got a hand in those revenue streams, because the brand level differentiation is going to be a lot tougher as you get into that space.
All that Mercedes scent that you just get in that car and you say, damn it, I'm in this.
And I think the key word you said there was could.
Correct.
And again, as I was saying before, we're making a lot of assumptions that they're going to get to that level, and it assumes that local communities aren't going to start figuring out some kind of regulation for these things. They need revenue from these things. Can an autonomous vehicle take me to work, but then I want it just to drive around because I've got a lunch appointment an hour? And the other thing I think we haven't really thought about yet is, the way municipalities pay for services today is with revenues from parking fees, from parking structures. If they don't have that, we're going to see a big financial crisis within small towns and larger states around this country. They're going to look for revenue somewhere. I just don't think these things are going to skate by
without
something forcing that price per mile back to something more competitive with the vehicle.
Maybe, but just look at the growth of Uber and Lyft. And even though they're losing money, the number of rides that they deliver is growing by leaps and bounds every single year. I mean, just project that out. And that's what gets the VC investment crowd very excited about a new technology. That's why Uber and Lyft have had zero problem raising money, because their rate of growth is so good.
Yeah. Yep.
Hey, a couple of other things here. And this is a good one as long as we're talking EVs and all that. Knows I Am So writes in to say Tesla's launching the Model Y in about 7 hours. Any thoughts on that? Charlie?
Well, they had to have something, right? I mean, the people were kind of clamoring for what's the next latest and greatest thing you're going to have. Until they get that Model 3 price point down, I think Tesla's just, I think that's got to be the focus of the company, is to make a mass-produced electric vehicle. That's what they promised. Frankly, in terms of what I'm watching, that to me is sort of the key issue for the company, is can they get a price competitive electric vehicle.
$35,000
like they promised. I mean, that was what the golden egg was. And the Model Y, I think, sort of, it's nice, but that's not what the focus of the company is.
No, it's going to be more expensive.
It's going to be more expensive.
Michael,
No,
what do you think? Model Y?
It's just another vehicle to build and adds more complexity. So I guess we'll see how all that works its way through. I mean,
But it is a crossover.
Oh, no,
in a
absolutely.
crossover crazy market.
No. It's been required. I mean, you've got companies. 10 years ago, someone once said that Jag would have a full slate of crossovers. They'd say you're crazy, and then of course look what's happened. So just about every brand, I wouldn't say every, but just about every brand has to go into that space.
So is this going to be a real vehicle that real people will be able to buy in a reasonable amount of time, or is this simply a diversion? Like, look over here and don't pay any attention to those Model 3s that we're not building over there.
I find it hard to believe that they would spend the time and effort to do a vehicle in that space and not be serious about it. I would find that hard to believe.
What do you think, John?
Well, look, one of the criticisms of Tesla right now is the Model S is long in the tooth.
Sure.
The Model X is starting to show its age from a styling standpoint for those of us who care about styling. So new product is what it's all about. Yep. This is going to be a higher margin product because it's an SUV. I think it's a good move, although I agree with you, Gary. I think the timing of the announcement, right? I don't think this thing's ready to go yet. Yeah. I don't think they've even announced if they know where they're going to build it. They had suggested maybe build it at the Gigafactory. Maybe that's where it'll be. I see this all as diversion. The SEC wants to take a chunk out of Elon's ass. They're probably going to post negative numbers, i.e. lose money for the current quarter. So they've got to start, and Elon's
they're building to a plant in China to begin to launch
this
Model
year.
3 there. Right.
So, Elon is the master of distracting people with bright, shiny objects, and the Model Y intro tonight is a very bright, shiny object.
Boy, he can land a rocket, though. I will give him that. Boy, he can land a rocket. I still stare at the screen when that happens. Like, how did he do that?
It's really cool.
It is really cool.
And his boring company just got the okay to bore a hole under the Las Vegas Convention Center.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. We're getting down to the end, but we got a phone call from Clem, and Clem is one of our greatest viewers, and he takes the time to call in. So, Carmen, let's bring that phoner in.
This is Clem Zarowski at Delmont, Pennsylvania. It took us years to get away from being tied to the Arabs on their oil for gasoline. Now we're going to end up being tied to China to get the materials to build the batteries for the battery cars. Does this make any sense to anybody? Thank you.
Thanks for that, Clem. Who wants to tackle that? Go ahead, Charlie.
Well, I think that's a valid point to make. I think that this, as I was saying before, that China's kind of cornered the market on a lot of these rare earth metals, and that does put us in a bit of a precarious situation. Do we have to save the planet or not, though? I guess ultimately it's sort of what are your thoughts on that? Is this something that whether we want to or not, we have to move away from fossil fuel burning methods of transportation? I don't know that if we can come up with something better, I'm all for it. But until then, we're kind of stuck. We got to go this route.
There's no doubt. I don't think it's going to start thermonuclear warfare, but you can start to see that shift over to certainly the Chinese are looking at what's going to be required in an electrified environment. Interesting, if you look at the Japanese, they're thinking beyond electrification. They think about fuel cell. How can we take hydrogen? So they've kind of gone to the next level, and that's kind of one of those decade-long discussions. When's it coming? Oh, in another 10 years, and it'll always be that way. But I think certainly the Chinese have been and looking at this for a long, long time, and they know what's going to be required.
I would say this, it's a global industry, and you've got to source materials and components from all over the world.
Yeah.
Just look at catalytic converters. They have platinum, palladium, and rhodium.
Right.
None of that is mined in the U.S. Some of it's mined in Canada, very little. Most of it comes from the Soviet Union or for war-torn countries in Africa.
Congo or
the
whatever.
Congo,
Yeah.
well, that's more cobalt, right, for batteries. But, whether we buy stuff from the Chinese or not, it's like I said, it's a big world out there. It's a global industry. You've got to source from all over the place. There's no one country anymore that can do it all on its own.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I'll step off my soapbox. And we should probably wrap up this show. But Gary, good show. you got a couple of good guests here today.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
No, you guys did a great job and appreciate it. And,
Yeah.
insights we otherwise wouldn't get since you guys are deep diving this
My
stuff all
goal
the
on
time.
coming on this show is don't insert your foot in your mouth. So I think I was able to do that. So
No, you didn't put it in your mouth or any other place.
no,
for
there you
that
go.
matter.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Real good. Want to thank all of you for having tuned in.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, your journey, our passion. Lear, a global leader in automotive seating and electrical systems. And by Borg Warner, propulsion solutions that support a clean, energy-efficient world.
Visit our website, Autoline.tv, where you can watch us live Thursday afternoons. Get your daily fix with Autoline Daily and in-depth analysis and interviews with Autoline This Week. There's all that and much more at Autoline.tv. It's great.
Good.
You know, so one of the things I keep thinking about is last week you said that the U.S. could become the third horse in a three-horse race.
We are the third horse in the three-horse race, if you really think about it. China's close to 26, 27 million vehicles sold every year. If you add up all of Europe, and it's still, I mean, all of Europe, you're probably looking at over 20 million. We're the third horse in a three-horse race. Yeah.
Well, you got to look at it as a NAFTA market or a USMCA
Yeah,
market, and then
yeah.
it's about 20 million. So
Yeah,
almost about where
It's
you
almost
fit.
about the size of Europe, but
But that's in units. Put it in dollars, or more importantly,
From a
put it in
dollars
profitable
perspective,
dollars.
yeah, no,
then
the
we're
US
number one.
the
Still,
US is
Net
still-
NAFTA
still
or
important. Yeah.
U.S., Canada, Mexico, you still make way more money here in profit than any other market.
But from a regulatory perspective, you see these other countries continue to push the boundaries, and what do we do? I mean, it's a big question.
Well, I think it's going to be, I think politically as a country, we're getting paralyzed politically, but some big decisions have to be made about mass transportation.
And they're going to be made, to be honest with you, they're going to be made this year. So they have to be made this year, to be honest with you. I mean, that's because
In terms of what?
in terms of what's going to happen with our regulatory environment on the emission side. I mean, both those decisions are basically this month and next month. All of that is kind of up for
It's not
grabs
going
now.
to get resolved this year.
I know.
You know it's going to court.
And the OEMs don't want that. The OEMs
No,
at
of
least
course
tell me what I need to design to. They can't design when they don't know what this is going to be. That's the real issue.
Well, and do we really think that, if a company's just not going to make it, so they're facing massive fines, it's going to bankrupt them, they're not going to survive, do we really think Democrats or Republicans would allow that to happen?
Yeah.
That, well, you didn't meet our rules,
Yeah.
so we're going to make all these people go out of work.
Unfortunately, everybody's
I
pretty.
don't believe
These are
it
still
anymore,
on, by the way, just so you know.
I know, but I'm saying everybody's still pretty profitable right now. If we were down at a 13 million unit market, this would be a completely different discussion. I can guarantee you.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. with
It
you.
would be a different discussion.
Yeah.
So
In what regard?
when you're not making money, you are much more careful about where you put your capital. I mean, if you're doing quite well, you get extra cash flow, then they're willing to take some chances on some things. But at 13 million units and where the market shares are, people, OEMs don't want to take chances. They're just going to do the bare bones of what they need to do. So
And also, when you're making billions in profit, even though your margins are not the greatest, when you're making billions in profit, you can't go to Washington and say this regulatory stuff isn't working out.
Yeah.
When you're bleeding red ink and everybody's job is threatened, they pay attention.
absolutely, those are voters.
Yeah.
Voters need to have jobs. So makes sense.
Yeah.
But I think this is going to get tied up in court for years.
Oh,
I think it's
especially
gonna
with
be a mess.
California.
Well, with the ZEV mandate, absolutely.
absolutely.
And, the real problem for automakers, as I see it, is not what do we design for, what regulatory issue. It's having two different markets to
Absolutely.
ship cars to. Now, they ship cars all over the world. They know how to export cars and they know how to batch produce and blah, 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 blah. But, the average assembly plant makes 1,000 cars a day. That's 1,000 cars in the yard that have got to get moved out because the next day another 1,000 cars are coming in, and you got to move them out, and then another 1,000, and you've got to move cars. I don't care where they go, they got to go on trains and trucks, and just get them the hell out because we're going to load up the yard tomorrow. And this is why you get Mustang convertibles in Minnesota in January. And it's why you get all-weather, all-wheel drive cars in the Sun Belt, because they just got to move these damn things out there. And now if you go, no, this can only go to ZEV states, and this one has to go to non-ZEV, it's a disaster.
So doesn't this mean that we need more harmonized globally?
Oh, absolutely. The fact
regulatory-
that we haven't found a way to, and I know that a lot of the regulators are talking about it, but nobody wants to give in. Well, I like that, but I'll work with yours. And I think that the lack of harmonization globally is a real issue, to be honest with you.
But weren't you basically saying earlier that you're seeing greater harmony between what's going on in Europe?
Directionally, China and Europe and China directionally are moving in a similar direction. I wouldn't say the regulatory, the tests are not the same,
right,
but they're directionally moving in that direction. I worry, you mentioned the two vehicles. Think about it, you've got a vehicle in Colorado and you can't sell it in California. You can do that now.
Colorado becomes ZEV states. Don't worry about that.
But you know, I remember a day, even though I grew up in Canada, I remember a day where you had California cars and 49 state cars, and we're going to go back to that unless we can get this right. And I think the OEMs they're definitely don't want to go to that world.
No, they don't. But I don't think they have. They're not the deciding vote in this.
No.
This is the Trump administration against California, and it's going to end up in court, and that's going to take years to get resolved.
Yeah. It's going to add a lot of cost. Just add a lot of cost.
Prices will go up. We will get to $50,000 a car very quickly, Charlie.
Yeah, they are.
Well, and I mean, and as you guys reported on Autoline Daily today about the tariffs that we haven't even talked about and what that may add to the price of a vehicle.
So yeah, let's get. What do you think, Charlie?
You're talking 232.
232. Right?
Yeah, it'll be crippling.
I know. Are we going to get it? What do you think?
When's the Mueller report come out? Right? I mean,
So, okay, Michael, what do you think?
I'm definitely not going to say that.
Are we going to get it?
So, I think it'll hit the CBU side first before it hits
What is CBU?
complete build cars. We call them CBUs or cars. It'll hit the car side, or like imported cars. It'll hit imported cars first. I think you put it on the parts side, and it'll be pandemonium. I really do.
All right, so explain this to me. So you're saying that if a car is made in Mexico or Canada,
No. U.S. and Canada would be exempt.
it's just pretty
Non-NAFTA.
much Europe. It's just pretty much Europe and
Asia,
Japan,
Europe,
and
Korea.
Yeah, I think
Korea.
Korea's even exempt as well.
Europe, Japan, Korea. Those are the big locations.
So how is this 232 then?
232 is.
232 says basically there's a national security issue
Right.
that we don't make our own cars.
No, but
So we can ignore WTO trade rules and implement a 25% import tariff.
okay,
we didn't say it made sense. We just said it is what it
we
is.
have 232 against the steel and aluminum
And aluminum right now.
Right.
correct.
from Canada and
And
from Mexico.
and other locations.
Okay,
as well.
but cars are okay.
NAFTA makes them exempt.
The new-
We've already
No,
written in.
No.
The new USMCA, they have side letters that aren't part of the ratification process. It basically says you're not going to be part of the 232
They already
process.
agreed to that. on
They already
the fact
agreed to that.
You're going to be exempt from this if the
Yeah.
president goes forward with that.
But my understanding is the steel and aluminum tariffs apply to Canada and Mexico.
yeah,
They do,
they're in place.
but on the auto parts and the car parts
Yeah.
side,
Yeah.
that
That's
does
the-
not apply to
Correct.
them. At least not right away anyways.
Right.
So.
My own belief is Trump is going to go through with these import tariffs on cars, 25%. That's my personal belief, my reading of the tea leaves. I think he's going to do it.
Yeah. And people might say, oh, well, then poor Toyota. But what it really is the dealer side. You've got all these dealers that are in every pocket of this country, and they're going to sit there and go, well, I can't sell this car, but I can sell this one. And it's just going to really, it's going to really jackknife the industry.
Dealers
Well,
are
you're-
the, sorry, go
I was
ahead.
just going to say, if he does do it and it gets implemented in May 18th or whatever the date would be when the final day they have to make the announcement, you're going to see a massive rush to the market. We're going to see 17 million plus
Yeah.
cars
Yeah.
all summer long till that inventory's
It's
gone.
going to be a scrappage program. I mean, that's basically what it is.
It's
And then
going
it's
to be
gonna-
pulled
and then it's gonna
forward, and
collapse.
next year is going to be a.
Everyone's going to be flooding the
fourth
ports
quarter,
to get all the
it's
product
gonna-
here they
People are going
can.
to be
and-
crying in their beer in the fourth quarter.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
No, dealers are the only ones who potentially can stop it from happening. Again, my opinion,
Yeah.
my reading of the tea leaves, because all the dealers I know, they're 100% behind Trump. or were until this came up.
Yeah.
And now they're 100% against the tariffs.
See, so
I mean, 100%.
What I understand is that, like, when did the auto industry become a problem?
Here's the logic. You may not agree with it, but here's the logic.
1980s when it was a problem, and he hasn't broken out of that mindset, I don't think.
just don't understand.
The logic is this. Number one, as a candidate running for president, Trump's number one thing besides build the wall was, I'm going to bring manufacturing jobs back to middle America. All you people that forgot, I haven't forgotten you. I'm going to create an environment where we're going to create more jobs in America. And it will. The tariff will have lots of bad implications. It will force everybody to build more cars here.
And okay, and so when was the last time you were in an assembly plant and saw lots and lots of people?
No, here's the other thing is
Lots of robots.
there are quite a few automotive suppliers who have a given amount of defense work. There are quite a few defense suppliers that have a given amount of automotive work. So if the auto industry were to go down, it would hurt the defense industry. We've essentially lost tool and die. We've lost stamping. We've lost fill in the blank. And so we're losing our capability of being able to manufacture our own military armaments and ammunition.
But the other thing, John, you got to keep in mind is they're going to retaliate, right? So
That's what I was going to bring up. I mean, this is not a
whatever
vacuum.
we gain in automotive, we're going to lose somewhere else.
I'm not defending it.
No, I
I'm just
know.
saying this is how I'm reading the situation.
So if we get to a point where we're in a war such that it would rise to the level whereby we need to suddenly have all of these munitions and so on and so forth, I think a war like that, basically, we're going to be looking at our watches and saying, well, we got like 11 minutes and
Maybe, but if it doesn't go that way, you're screwed.
lights are out.
Well, there's some interesting things we're seeing with tariffs already. What he's put on China, and we're seeing China's economy slow down. The dollar's been strengthening, and what happens as a result of that? The trade deficit's going through the roof. It's exceeding $1 trillion now. There are going to be ramifications from all of this. Then the idea that we can just implement a 25% tariff and we'll have a little bit of I'm not saying you believe this, but I'm just saying.
No,
we're so short-sighted.
Let me go on the record. I don't want to see this tariff at all. I think it's going to screw up the industry royally.
Oh, my God.
I'm saying, though, if I look at this president, I think he's going to go through with it.
I think so. And I think the industry can't do anything other than just pass along the cost, right? There's no reason to change your sourcing or anything because if the Democrats
hope
come
that
in,
it's
it's going to go away.
transitionary, yeah.
President could change his mind in 3 months. The Europeans are the greatest people ever. We're not going to do it.
All right, so let's say for the sake of argument, it goes through, and you guys would have a better sense of this than I certainly do by any stretch of the imagination, but it goes through, it's implemented, it starts in May or whatever, and then he doesn't get reelected, and the Democrat comes in and changes this. Okay.
I don't think there's a guarantee of that.
No, I'm not. No, I'm just saying
If the Democrat would change it.
Well,
I mean,
That's a good point.
Trump did a horrible thing. He's awful. I don't know what we can do about it though, because secretly, I think the UAW probably would support this. A lot of labor around this country that the Democrats are trying to regain would support this. I don't know there's any guarantee that they would get rid of it.
But
Right.
is there? I mean, from all that you're seeing in terms of the way, looking forward in the changes in suppliers and what's going on there, I mean, I don't suddenly think that there's going to be like a huge amount of they're saying, okay, let's have new bricks and mortar investment.
No, I completely agree with you. They would have to probably sit there for 2 or 3. If this pervades for 2 or 3 years and it looks like it's going to find its way into the system, then they might start making some decisions. But if it's a year or so, nobody's going to build brick and mortar. I mean, the Japanese build plants with the thought that they're going to build cars there for 30 or 40 years. They're not going to think, for 2 years we'll build cars and then we'll abandon the place. That would be crazy. So I agree with you. It's going to screw everything up, to be honest.
Badly.
And okay, but what I wonder about is that Is it something that you recover from quickly, or is it something that just sort of like reverberates in heads?
I think depending on how long it'll happen, I mean, there'll be bloodshed. There'll be suppliers that will go out of business because of some of these things that are going on. And I just think that that's just roadkill probably for the administration. So
I will say this in defense of the president. We've been dealing with what's he going to do, for the last 2 years now, right? It was 2 years ago we were all talking about the border adjustment tax, and that was going to be 25%. I will give him this, that given all of this uncertainty, and if you have to expand, you want to build a plant, the president's really only given you one option, and that is, let's just do it in the U.S. Mm-hmm. That's the only way you can avoid whatever the president's got in mind. And so all this chaos and everything is frustrating, but at the end of the day, maybe it's achieving what the president wants ultimately, hence FCA's investment, hence Toyota's announcement for their expansion. Maybe we're getting there by just causing all this trouble without ever having to actually do it. I'm not saying he won't do it, but maybe he is achieving some of it without actually having to have any tariffs there.
yeah.
Yeah, very possibly. I mean, the U.S. is still a competitive place to manufacture in the aggregate. You look at, access to capital, regulation, labor, it's energy prices. We're still a very competitive place to manufacture. And so I think some of these things, not the Toyota Mazda plan, I'm still surprised by that. And the more this 232 discussion goes on, I'm thinking maybe that was their strategic decision. That, so what if we put $1 billion into the plant? Even if we don't need it, we only lost $1 billion. Whereas if 232 does go through, wow.
That starts to look
we
like
look brilliant.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, and also, I think you can say that Detroit 3 are probably going to benefit the most. Not that everyone's not going to suffer a little
They'll
bit.
have to go back to making cars.
But they're they're going to not suffer as much as everybody else. And
Correct.
So
And Toyota and Honda will do very, very well because they manufacture.
Yeah, most of their volume is here anyways, to be honest. Even Hyundai and Nissan are not far off. I mean, it's going to be some of the Jags of the world. I mean, they're already...
We have Brexit and...
Yeah, boy, that's just another
what?
nail in the coffin for those guys.
So, and maybe this is worth a whole nother show. I was at Magna Steyr a couple of weeks ago. Why not turn your product... If you're a Jaguar, Magna makes the I-Pace and the E-Pace.
Right.
Why not say, hey, Magna, what about a North American Steyr plant?
But there's a time chain to that. I mean, you can't get anything going in less than 24 months.
Oh,
Yeah.
Come on, Tesla does it in 6 months in a tent.
But you can't get anything going in less than 24 months. So it's all about the paint shop. It's all about the paint shop. I mean, yeah, the body shop, yes, but the paint shop, that has to be right, because nobody's going to buy a vehicle that's not painted properly. So
do you think, Michael, we'll start getting back to kit cars? That we're just going to be shipping over stuff or
CKDs,
and
yeah.
start assembling them?
CKDs don't really make any sense at 25,000 units or above. You lose all the economies of scale. So, I mean, that's kind of the rule that we've always kind of worked with. Sort of 25 to 50 is no man's land, and above 50, it really makes sense to build locally with a paint shop and start to bring in your supply.
Well, I bet Jaguar Land Rover doesn't do that. They don't do 50,000, do they?
Of their vehicles?
In the U.S. market.
Oh yeah, no, they would have had economies of scale. They certainly, for some vehicles, there may be some vehicles they don't get up to 50, but you start to add in Mexico and Canada and other export markets,
Okay, maybe.
and it would have made sense. Absolutely.
I was just at AM General this week too, and
Mishawaka.
Well, I wasn't at Mishawaka. They have a new headquarters here in the Detroit area, engineering center. Very nice. But they've done contract manufacturing.
Right.
They built the Mercedes R-Class in Indiana and shipped 100% of them to China.
Yeah.
But I asked them, so are EV startups and mobility companies knocking on your door? Oh, yeah. Do you have contracts with them? Sure do. Can you tell me who they are? No way. But so if AM General is having companies knock on its door, Magna's got to have people, especially with these 232 tariffs going, Mr. Don Walker,
do that, yeah.
Why don't you take over? Well, they probably wouldn't want a UAW plant. So maybe, a Lordstown or a Detroit Hamtramck is not the best way to go. But I don't know.
And to be honest with you, Oshawa, the Canadians were saying, well, maybe, Magna would take it over, but Oshawa's, there's 3 plants there. People don't know that. It's gigantic. It's almost too big to be a contract manufacturing facility. So, but it's got a paint shop. Again, it all comes back, do you have a paint shop? And if it's new, then that's half the battle.
Right.
Usually you can work around that. But and again, I don't know what Magna's thinking, but to me, they would need at least 2 or 3 guys to kind of sign up and say, we need our vehicles built locally.
I mean, small guys?
Well,
Like a Jaguar?
Yeah, but I would say, but at least 30 to 40,000 units, so you can get up to some level of scale over 100,000 units. Below that, it starts to really, it's
I want to
difficult.
say Magna told me their break even was around 160,000 units.
Yeah, well, that would probably make sense. Yeah, absolutely.
in Steyr.
Yeah.
And that's like 5 separate assembly halls.
Right. Because I don't think they have 5 different paint plants. I think they're
No,
using
1.
They have 1, and again, it's all about the paint plant.
It is.
Yeah.
And I'm told in a, regular OEM assembly plant in the U.S., $300 million for
Easy.
a paint shop.
Easy, absolutely. Yeah, especially if it's standalone. So and the problem is that you just can't say, oh, I'm going to fix a paint plant overnight and I'll start using it. So what they do is they'll build a brand new one and then keep using the old one, and then just one day they start shifting over to the new one with the new vehicle and they shut the old one down. It's built in modules. They just can't. Refitting a paint plant is very difficult.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, look, we ought to let the crew go
Okay.
home.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Good stuff, guys. This
Very interesting.
Really interesting discussion.
Yeah, if he does do those tariffs, then I'd run out and buy your used car right away, because they're going to appreciate in value almost overnight.
Oh yeah, we should all go out and buy cars and start find a lot, and we'll sell them off the lot here.
It's going to be a chaos.